Hi, and thank you for joining us today. You're listening to Radio Ear Network, and I'm your host, Julie Salant, and this is Motivation Addict on Society Bites Radio, social interaction for the mind and soul. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the show. I am your host, Julie Salant, and today our guest is Rhonda Knight Boyle. She is a transformational leader and coach. She's a best-selling author of Turning Talents into Strengths, Stories of Coaching Transformations, and host of the Strengths Activation Show on BeLive TV. Rhonda has been a part of the Strengths movement since 2008, and she's also a certified law of attraction facilitator with a special emphasis on neuroscience principles. I am very excited to have her here. So welcome to the show, Rhonda.
Yay, I'm so glad to be here, Julie. Thanks so much for having me.
I am too. Welcome. I'd love it if you would tell the listeners maybe a little bit about your background, because I know you've been doing some amazing things, and then a little bit about the Strengths movement, because I don't even know what that is.
You bet. So I have been involved in personal development and that sort of positive psychology since 1997. And, I think once you start, a lot of that has to do with the way I'm gifted naturally. I noticed the best possibilities in people and how they can be their best. And so, it just started with personally learning about that type of thing. And then, I got involved in this strengths movement. So what is that? It's where you really start to look at the more of the human person and how they do things best. So how can we find a better fit for them? If they keep getting in trouble on their performance review because they cannot seem to master this part of their job, what's up with that? Does that mean they're a bad employee? No. Let's find out what they're truly gifted at, because you'll find that there are certain parts of their job or the work that they do that they are masterful. And so that's really what the strengths movement is all about, is making sure that you work to live in your genius and the areas of mastery.
I love that.
Stuff.
I love that. And wouldn't it be awesome if we all could figure this out earlier rather than later in life? Because a lot of us kind of figure this out later on when we've tried so many things that don't work. And I love the fact that you talk about it as in a strength, in a positive way, which it is. Is this based on partly the Myers-Briggs test? I know it's a strength movement, but it's also a test. Is that right? Does it go with that?
Well, there are several assessments on the market that can help people understand their motivations, what influences their decisions, and so forth. Myers-Briggs would certainly be a typing test. It gives us insight into your personality. Also, there's the DISC profile, which is used a lot in a lot of organizations. And then there's the Clifton Strengths Assessment, which is what happens to be my personal preference. But now there's the Colby, there's the Motivators Assessment, there's the Values in Action. So it's never ending. And there are many of us are multi-assessment certified. So what's really important, though, is our focus, because our focus is on how can we get the best out of you so that you're happy. Because, when you're doing something that you love, guess what happens? You have more energy.
Yes.
You are more productive because you're living in your genius, in your sweet spot, in that space where you actually lose track of time.
Yes.
And you can't wait until you do it again. So there are clues that we actually follow throughout our lives, right? Mm-hmm. Hopefully I'm better today than I was when I was a 10-year-old, but it's sort of like we zigzag our way through life. When in today's environment, we have the opportunity to actually use assessments and then coaches to help us tap into that genius. Yes. So that at all times we are living and working and playing and serving in the areas that give us energy and that we do our very best.
And joy. We can bring joy to the
Yes,
world because we're happier too. Because you're in your zone,
absolutely.
your happy zone. Can
That's
you
it.
can you share with us a little bit more about how you came to learn about your specific gifts?
Well, my husband came home from church one day and he said, "You are a woo." And I said, "What is that?" And he said, "Well, I don't know exactly, but uh, you have to take this assessment." And sure enough, I did, and I was. But really, after I had taken this assessment and started really learning about myself, I started to recognize that I've always been this way. Like, this has always been me. I have always talked a lot. In fact, let me tell you a little story quickly. My father passed away in 2005, and after everybody left and the funeral was over, my siblings and I went through a box of memorabilia, and inside, Julie, guess what I found?
What?
My second grade report card.
Oh, what did it say?
I was a behavior problem. Can you believe it?
Oh, Rhonda.
Yes, the teacher said that I talked too much and that I could not sit still. So imagine when I take this test, and I won't even tell you how many decades I was, and I find out that those are actually talents. They're gifts.
Right.
Where from the time I was a little girl, my teachers had been telling me to sit down and hush. And so, now I know that I have this ability and a gift to, help animate things and tell stories. I'm a storyteller and those types of things. And I can see opportunity, and I'm a catalyst for change, because guess what? I'm off doing it. You better catch up.
Yeah. It's so interesting to me, and how it's a real sign of the times in a positive way that we now recognize these as gifts. Because for anybody out there that's listening, that's empathic or intuitive and sensitive, that's what we're told by our own family members a lot of the time when we're young, is to sit down and be quiet, and why are you feeling so much? And to be told that from a young child, which I was for a long time, and I had loving parents. I mean, I had a wonderful, wonderful childhood, but they didn't understand why I was different and I felt things so deeply. So I completely understand where you're coming from, but isn't it awesome now that we know that these are gifts and we can help other people who don't have those gifts and bring them out, right?
That's what it's all about. And it's a movement in that now there are four or five assessments that you can take. It's a movement in that people like you and I are out here talking about what really motivates people, what lights you up, and would you like to do more of that? And so that's where, we talk about movements and how people really get to start to see one another. Sometimes, and I'll tell you in transparency, you have talents and gifts that I don't have. So you sense and feel your way. And the only way I would ever know that is I have a black and white instrument that I can look at and go, "Oh my gosh, tell me more about that." Because guess what? I haven't got a clue. So it allows you to come with curiosity instead of criticism.
Right. I love that. I love that. That's amazing.
It really is.
Tell us, because I have a special note here, tell us what they discovered in the 1950s before we move forward with the strengths, based on the strengths movement.
Sure. Well, so in the 1950s, there one of these assessments, it's my favorite. It's called the Clifton Strengths Assessment. There was a man named Donald Clifton, and he was a teacher or a professor in a school, the University of University of Nebraska at Lincoln, I believe. And so this is in the 1950s, and his president approached him and said, "Listen, we've got a problem. We've got kids coming in here after graduating from high school, and some of them can't read. So we've got to get them up to snuff so that they can perform better and get out of college, right?" And so they developed a speed reading test. And so they took these kids and they did a pretest, and they found that most of the kids read about, I don't know, 145, somewhere around there. That's how many words per minute that they were reading and understanding.
Mm-hmm.
And then, but there was this small segment of kids that were reading at 350 words a minute. Like, wow, that was a kind of a difference. Yeah. And so that was their test group. And so their hypothesis was that these kids who were reading well would be dumbed down by the test because they'd be nervous and there would be that kind of anomaly programming for them. And then these kids that were reading poorly, they would be ramped up to read really, really well. So that's what the opening premise was. So they did the testing and the results stunned them. And what they discovered was that the kids that were reading slowly at 145 words, they ramped up 40 some odd percent. It was amazing. They went to 195 words a minute. So that was a great improvement, right?
Wow. Yep.
But this small segment of kids, which they had predicted would go down, they actually began to read at the rate of 2,900 words a minute.
What?
I'm not even kidding.
Wow. Holy
and
cow.
So that's when they recognized that these kids had this gift. There was something about them that was more, they had more practice, they had more experience, but they were also gifted because they could do this process with them and they could ramp them up in magnificent ways. So wouldn't you, this is where you get to look, wouldn't you love to do more of what you're already good at?
Yes, absolutely.
I think that's where we're all at, right?
Absolutely. So how can we identify when we're living and working within an area of natural talent and strength?
So you're going to experience things like you can't wait to get started on it.
Mm-hmm.
There's this yearning in you, oh my gosh, I get to go do that tomorrow. Or, right? So you get energy just thinking about doing it.
Yes.
And another thing that you might have is people will tell you that you're good at it.
Yes.
You've been complimented about it your whole life. And here's another one. Maybe you've gotten in trouble for it your whole life.
Yes.
But you love it. That's another way. And then another way would be that when you're doing whatever it is that's your genius, whether that's putting a plan together or writing or fixing something or being really productive, whatever it is for you, you lose track of time when you're doing it.
Right. So you could be doing it all day long and then you don't even realize, you're like, oh my goodness, it's 4:00 already. And I didn't even take a lunch break because I've just been doing my thing. I'm happy.
I know. Yeah. I know.
Yeah. And by the way, just side note, if you've ever been at a job or doing something that you hate, you'll be watching the clock every minute.
Oh, no kidding. That's exactly right. You worry about time, time drags for you.
Yeah.
And things like that. So, and another thing too is another way that you can tell is that you can look back, like I said, and you got in trouble for it, but you also can recognize a time or 2 or 10 where you achieved that mastery, and just thinking about it and remembering it can give you that energy too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I love that. Because that happens. That's exactly what happens when you get in the zone. You're thinking about it and let's just say that you're writing and you're like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to go write. And then, before you know it, you've written 25 pages and, other people look at you like, wow, you wrote a lot.
I know, right?
It just depends on what your gifts are. And so this question is, obviously, I'm thinking everyone's going to be thinking this because I know I was. So we've assessed our strengths. We know what they are. So